Hey there, BookTube. It is I, your trusted confidant, Buck, and I am here with young Beefton. You can sort of see his head there. He wants to sit right next to me today, so he's not going to be in the background, and we're just going to have to accept that. Welcome to another episode of the October Spooktacular. Spooktacular used to mean something in this town. I'm trying to bring it back to its former glory. Today we are going to be talking about the Shirley Jackson novel, We Have Always Lived in the Castle. So Shirley Jackson is the writer who penned The Lottery, which was cool. So I thought that I would give whatever We Have Always Lived in the Castle is a shot, because I was told that it was going to be medieval horror. See, this keeps happening to me. You have to have noticed this running theme by now. People keep telling me it's going to be medieval eco-horror because that's what I was looking for. And they give me this battery of books, and some of them are good, but none of them are medieval eco-horror. And this isn't any of those things except, like, horror. Like, a castle isn't... There's not even a castle. I wouldn't know that until later. But it looked spooky. The cover looked spooky, and it had the word castle in it. So, from the top... the main character is a young girl named Mariquette Blackwood, and she is an insane young lady who lives in a sort of Castle Frankenstein situation overlooking a neighboring village full of neighboring villagers, all of whom she despises. Now, to specify, when I say that she lives in a Castle Frankenstein situation, I do not mean she lives in an actual castle, just a large house on a hill, which was sort of the situation in Frankenstein. Well, I'm pretty sure he was just, Victor Frankenstein was staying in his dorms. But I know he had a manor. I don't remember if that was a castle, but that was in Geneva. And completely besides the point. Well, the villagers also hate the Blackwoods. And she shares her Addams family mansion and surrounding forested property with her senile paraplegic Uncle Julian and her older sister Constance, who is in a constant state of denial. Now, everybody hates everybody else because of the event. It is eventually alluded to as to what the event was, but early on, you don't know. About halfway through the book, it is clarified that the event was a mass poisoning. It was arsenic in the sugar at the family dinner that wiped out most of the Blackwood lines, save for the only 3 characters in the novel. Mariquette was 12 at the time and sent to bed without dinner, probably for being insane. Uncle Julian didn't take enough sugar to die, but he's, been better, you know. And Constance got off totally scot-free, cut and dry. So, naturally, Constance was charged with murder of her family and ultimately acquitted because the evidence just wasn't there. So, for 6 years, these 3 weirdos have been living in isolation, with Mariquette making these weekly forays down into the village for groceries and library books. The villagers resent the Blackwoods, both for their wealth and for all of the alleged murder. Constance's agoraphobia looks that much more suspicious since she hasn't left the giant beautiful house since her family died, and she has her tween sister do all of her shopping. Whenever Mariquette goes into the village, the locals try to intimidate her into leaving town or sing mocking nursery rhymes about poison tea. Mariquette responds by vividly fantasizing about brutally murdering them. The family dysfunction functions well enough with Constance doing all the cooking and cleaning, as well as enabling Mariquette in all of her obsessive-compulsive behaviors, encouraging her to do witchcraft, nail stuff to trees, arbitrarily burying valuables. And Connie also cares for Uncle Julian, whose mind is well and fully gone. He spends every moment of the day obsessing about organizing his papers for a book he plans on writing about the night that his entire family died. And that's... Oh, you're setting up back there? No, you're good. That's fine. Enter Cousin Charles, who decides to start setting things right. He tries to convince Connie to leave the house, to put Uncle Julian in an appropriate level of care, which, not the worst idea. And to get Mariquette's situation resolved. Although he's vague on this last point, but, at the time this was written, I think that's just like a lunatic asylum. And our boy Charlie is making some headway, because despite Mariquette's constant pushback, because every attempt he makes to confront the girl results in her babbling non sequiturs about life on the moon, or listing the properties of various poisonous mushrooms, all of which are in the family garden. So I believe they refer to that as foreshadowing. He also throws a sequence of fits about Mary Cat burying money and nailing gold chains to trees in an effort to bring Constance's attention to the fact that items have material value and, when sold, can be exchanged for goods and services. Connie laughs it off and continues cooking and cleaning, comfortably nested in her Stepford delusion, though there are moments when bleak reality shines through and she hyperventilates about letting it get this far. So, again, he's punching through. You know, like a narwhal, like a narwhal, just getting through the ice. So Mary Cat, she has had about enough of this interloper interloping and ruining her weird delusional fantasy life. So she chucks his burning pipe into a wastebasket full of newspapers and starts a fire that burns down the whole dang house. Whole dang house. Takes the roof off, rendering it like a castle, turreted and open to the sky. So that's where we have always lived in the castle from. It was not initially a castle. It wasn't a castle until she burnt the roof off of it. And while the house is burning down, the villagers come up and they laugh at them. And they smash up some windows and jars of preserves and generally make a nuisance of themselves. This is classic villager behavior. It screeches to a halt when it turns out that Uncle Julian died in the fire. Probably of heart failure, chasing around the papers that he was going to use to write his memoir about the night that his family died and joining said dead family. And it's during the fire that we get the big reveal, the very obvious big reveal, that it was Mary Cat who poisoned the family. Like, if you had been paying attention, you probably could have clocked that within the first 20 pages or so, because the girl is just so wackadoo, but that is the big moment of voila! You know, right at the end. But she's been fantasizing about dead bodies and vengeance since way early on. So Constance is just a little wind-up toy. She didn't poison the family. So Cousin Charles sees that the situation cannot be salvaged and he gets out of Dodge. And then Mary Cat and Constance hide in the woods for a bit, then move back into the charred wreckage of the house. And they seal off the destroyed portions of the house and continue their sad, isolated life. Reclusivity cranked up to 11, sleeping on the wet remains of the burnt mattress and wearing Uncle Julian's clothes. They don't even attend his funeral. They just stay inside, play with the cat, and bake onion pies. So the neighbors come by, ashamed of having gone feral while the house was burning down, and leave them guilt offerings of home-cooked dinner, which the girls eat and critique to one another. Cousin Charles comes by again and tries one last hustle, but Connie's on to him now. The Blackwood sisters swear to never answer their door again, but they listen at the smashed-out wreckage of the window like meth heads and hear their neighbors either struggling with their own shame or old women using their likenesses for witch stories to scare the little kids. "Oh, Constance," ends the book, "we are so happy." Chilling is a fair word. It's an exploration of how far things can go if no one pumps the brakes. Uncle Julian is too far gone and seems like he was an ineffective, mooching blowhard before then. Mary Cat is a perfect storm of neuroses with OCD, dissociation, and garden variety sociopathy, figuring pretty heavily into the first glance. In theory, some of that could be improved with boundaries and proper socialization, but those are the only things Constance does not have on the menu, since her entire character is a Martha Stewart version of the Mia Goth crying while smiling face in Pearl. I think on top of that, it's also an exploration of grief itself. You know, especially after the house burns down, after the big, horrible tragedy that you can't come back from, that disfigures everything, that destroys all of the rooms you once lived in, that literally tears the roof off of the house so you're exposed and open to the elements. And then they just continue chugging along as if it never happened. So that would serve as the allegory for the death of the entire family, and maybe it's just an allegory for poor Constance's life, because Mary Cat is just way too far gone. Like, she doesn't even clock what's happening, you know. But she's a space cadet. That's why she's always obsessing about life on the moon. And Uncle Julian, for all intents and purposes, the poison killed him. Like, there was not a lot going on there either. So Constance was the only one with a functioning mind left in the house. And her only defense against the world, especially with the worsening agoraphobia, although, I mean, though it got more intense after all the deaths, it was bad to begin with, was for her to cut herself off, from everything and just really lean into this delusion that everything is okay. And so the latter end of the book, the latter bit of the book, when they're living in the wreckage, when they're sleeping on the burnt mattress and they have like 2 cooking implements left that aren't charred and they can't really even go for groceries anymore because they won't let themselves be seen anymore and they're just entirely sequestered in the situation, that is grief. That is what grief looks like. That's why people come to your door and leave you food, because you are useless. You can't be walking down and cooking for yourself. You're cashed out. Grief utterly destroys you in the same way that the house was utterly destroyed by the fire. There was nothing left, and they're just trying to live in the ruins, in the wreckage of those memories. And that's what they were doing beforehand. After the family, that's what Constance was doing beforehand when the family was poisoned. Once again, Mary Cat, nothing there to worry about. But Constance was just trying to keep going, trying to push on, even though there was nothing to push on to, nothing to push on with. She created... You good? She created these roles for herself. We have to upkeep the house, we have to take care of Uncle Julian, we have to take care of Mary Cat. But, you weren't doing either. Uncle Julian got worse, and so did Mary Cat the entire time they were in your care. You were doing it because it offered you the delusion of comfort. It offered you, Constance, a way of trying to maintain the sense of normality. Just like living in the wreckage. Just like eating the remains of the jam preserves out of the broken glass that the villagers had come and smashed all over the house. And now living off their charity and scorning it. They drop stuff off at your door. It was worth reading. Honestly, as obvious as it seems now, I hadn't considered the grief aspect until I started to record this. But I think that's the point. I think that was why Shirley Jackson wrote it. She also had pretty severe agoraphobia, and so she probably lived a lot like that, but I don't know enough about her life to know what kind of grief she went through. But that's what happened with these characters. They faked it right up until they made it real, and then they just kept faking it because they faked it their entire life. And that's what grief will do to you. But ultimately, the idea is that you start rebuilding someday. And these girls are never going to start rebuilding because they are doubling down into pretending that everything is okay. Oh, Constance. We are so happy. It was spooky in a way. Not in the way I was looking for. I was looking for decapitations and a Swamp Thing vine monster. But spooky enough that I recommend it. That's enough out of me. Thanks for tuning in, Buck Bookers. I'll see you shortly, I'm sure.